Which is primary, essence or existence? What does it mean for one of them to be primary before another? What is existence? What is essence? What is reality? Does anything transcend reality? What is God? These are some of the questions for ontology or meta-ontology. And the term meta-ontology itself is quite confusing because ontology is the study of being. It's about metaphysics, that which is beyond physics. And so meta-ontology is about meta-metaphysics. It is beyond the study beyond physics. Meta-ontology is about what defines possibility and necessity, which are modal quantifiers. They speak about possible worlds. So something that is necessary would be something that holds or is true in all possible worlds. Something that is possible is something that holds in at least one accessible world. So then you must have an idea of possible worlds in order to reason about it. And that is about constructing reality, having a model of reality, being able to reason about reality. Reality must have semantic meaning. Otherwise, all speech, all ontology on top of it is vacuous. It is without meaning. So as a quick refresher, eames are the objects which are only themselves. Their only property is identity. You can think of it like a point particle, a zero-dimensional. It doesn't have any volume. It isn't even in any kind of space. The idea would be that the eames, the indivisible parts of reality, are what composes space as we know it. That if you take an atom in the chemical sense of like hydrogen, you take a hydrogen atom and you break it down into its parts, there's protons, neutrons, and electrons. Then if you break the protons into their parts, there's quarks. And if you break those into their parts, maybe there's quantum field. But no matter what the smallest thing is, it is at least itself. And I suggest, in accordance with Wolfram physics, that the smallest possible unit is only itself. In Wolfram physics, it's kind of seen as almost a placeholder because there is no greater meaning to the node besides what relationships it's a part of, besides the hyperedges it participates in. In my case, I've used the terminology of ooms. So the eam is like the true atom, the true indivisible part. The is a unity of eames. It's a hyperedge. We'll be skipping ahead and you can see some of this stuff later. Eam, if you're thinking about graph theory, is a node. Is a hyperedge. Neem would be a network of eames. It would be a hypergraph. And so you're taking a unity of which is equivalent to unity of eames. And then for Neem succession, you have an instantiation of almost priority or ordering. A Neem or a network of eames becomes some other network of eames. It is a sort of primordial nextness. It is a becoming between networks of eames. And the Neem succession rule is a composition of them, but as I'm recording this, I do realize that this is an oversimplification, so we'll be returning to this later after some more work. But the Neem succession rule would be something like the pre-succession Neem has at least one occurrence of some substructure L, and the post-succession Neem has at least one more occurrence of substructure R and one less of L, to which the becoming of L into R is substantiated. And reality would be the composition of these succession rules, specifically of all non-contradictory succession rules. So within that structure, you have all possible worlds. You can then reason about all possible worlds. You have the possible worlds where a lightning strike took out the power so your alarm didn't go off this morning. You have the possible worlds where a butterfly flaps its wings in Australia and so there's a tornado in Japan. But also you have very different possible worlds. This isn't just speaking about our universe, this is everything that could possibly be reasoned about. So every game of chess is in this world. Every game of Call of Duty is in this world. Every possible configuration of a Turing machine, if you're into computer science, is in this world. So any possible simulation of anything you can imagine, every fictional universe, every coherent fictional universe that is, every possible book that can be written, every possible movie that could be produced, including the semantic meaning of any possible sentence, of any non-contradictory sentence. So that's what reality is. And so what's existence? I would suggest that existence is a particular superposition of paths of succession rules. Now, what does that mean? So if you have one singular succession rule, then you have many possibilities. So let me write a little example for you. So this would be the initial state, and then this would be the update rule. You've got left becoming right. And as you can see, there are two substructures which can become different strings. So I'll show the next time step, and then you can see that the initial structure there became the right-hand side structure on that side, and the initial structure on this side became the right-hand structures in a different place. Because these are two simultaneous possibilities from the update rule, these are in a branchial superposition with each other. They're both open possibilities, different ways of tracing a causal path through space. But as you can see in the next time step, they both converge on the same eventual outcome. This is called causal invariance, where no matter the exact path that you take through space, the same destination is reached. So going back to what existence is, existence would be the sort of tree of possible paths that you can take through space given initial conditions and a single succession rule. So existence would be the traces of all possible causal paths under different orders of applications of a succession rule. So now we have an idea of reality. We can talk about possible worlds, we can talk about possibility, we can talk about necessity. We have an idea of what existence is, and I would suggest that the moment of now is a succession, a becoming, rather than a being. Rather than being a certain shape of space in the moment, what we experience as now is occurring in change. So what transcends this model? What is necessary to substantiate this model? Well, what are the meta-ontological conditions for these categories? I would suggest eam, you could see it right there in the equality, it's identity. The self-similarity, the sameness being of eames gives them their ontology, and so that sameness being, that identity, is transcendent of the eam itself. The eam is meta-ontologically dependent upon it. The unity of eames, we have this idea of the dot dot dot, but that's really expressing and. You have a unity. If you're talking about it just in binary terms, you would show it like this. However, hyperedges aren't just compositions of edges, they are unities between all eames composed of it. You are losing structural information if you try to break it down into binary relations. So if you're familiar with math class where you have the sum of I equals 0 all the way to like 6, and then you're adding 0 plus 1 plus 2, so on and so forth. Having a similar thing where you have the product of this eam, that eam, this eam, that eam. The product between all of them. Product is a predication of the conjunction of unity of andness. And I realize that I'm slightly in the way, but I hope you can still see. But that conjunctivity, oh, there you go, conjunctivity, that togetherness being, that holding together of identities, of eames, not just in ooms, but in the network of eames, of compositions as well, all the way up to, call it celestial bodies, to entire ecosystems. Conjunctivity is fundamentally transcendent as well. Transcendent of the model of reality. It is a meta-ontological condition of reality. And then we get to succession. And succession is, I would say, itself, the arrow is another transcendental. It is nextness being, or becoming. It is the instantiation of becoming via nextness being, call it. And so you have the necessary components, equality in identity and in conjunctivity, and then the arrow in succession. And the arrow itself is how we get the ideas of not and or. Because the branchial superposition is the instantiation of or. You have A, B, B, A, B, A, or A, B, A, B, B, A. You can't have neither under the rule. And then it is the case that you do not have that initial structure anymore once you get to this time step. But that can be expanded upon later. And then as you can understand from having equality and not, or implication, succession, these ideas, implication would be succession assuming simultaneity. So assuming that the pre-succession name holds in addition to the post-succession name back down here. So with all that in mind, in this model, essence would come first. Given a succession rule and an initial structure, the wealth of possible worlds already is. It doesn't exist because existence is specifically the succession to that possible world, but it already is. It's already part of reality. And I think this is what Plato was suggesting, or was trying to gesture towards, but failed to, in his idea of the world of forms. And so let's bring it down, and we'll start talking about what are these things that transcends reality. As you can see, God is on this list. Identity, or sameness being, underlies the eam, or node, and beyond. Everything has identity in a moment in time. But succession, and we'll come back to that moment in time language, conjunction, or conjunctivity, underlies the ooms, or compositions of eames, and beyond. It is a sort of togetherness being, holding together, and semantic language is at its limit when it's trying to describe it. Succession, or sort of nextness being, or becoming, underlies name, succession, and beyond. When you are going through life, you're shedding skin cells, your skin regenerates every few months, I think it is. Your stomach lining regenerates every few days. So, in some sense, we know there is a change to the identity of the parts. And so there is a question of what is the whole? Who are you? What are you? And those are some of the questions that I hope to explore in more episodes. Now we have God here. And think about the idea of these beings, this essence that we have here. And then you have the question, what is the essence of being itself? But essence, as a term, tries to describe the being of something. So then you're asking, what is the being of being? And that is quite a bit incoherent. It's hard to gesture at this. It's hard to gesture at this language. It's hard to conceive of these ideas because all of our concepts are navigations of reality. All semantic speech, at minimum, describes eames or unities of eames or networks of eames or the successions of them. Matter would be a shape of eames that composed the subatomic particles, that composed the atoms, that composed the crystalline structure. It'd be a shape of space. The throwing of a rock would be a succession of that shape of space. You have all possible descriptions of spaces, of all possible descriptions of matter, and you have all possible descriptions of the motion of that matter, or the change in that matter, the change in that space. This is the conceptual limit of everything. All possible concepts exist in reality. And you can take issues with the labels that I'm putting on these semantic meanings. Have at it. But I hope I can still paint you the picture. So then going back to this concept, God, the concept, which is why I have it in quotations, God is about the being of identity, conjunction, and succession, the transcendentals of reality. If I were to try to take away the quotation marks and say that God is the being of identity, conjunction, and succession, guess what I'm doing? I'm using identity. I'm saying that God is a particular being. It is a being that is being? No. So you have to say that, so you have to speak on a higher level of abstraction about the concept of God, and that it is about the being of the transcendentals. And if you're religious and you're watching this, you may find that to resonate with your idea of God as ipsum esse, being itself, or as Meister Eckhart's Godhead, or Plotinus's of the Neoplatonic tradition of the one, of oneness. The idea that the Trinity, where I would suggest that identity closely matches to the idea of the Father, conjunction closely matches to the idea of the Son, and succession closely matches to the idea of the Holy Spirit, where the Trinity are three persons sharing one divine essence. Three transcendentals sharing one being. And so for there to be reality, for there to be the unity of Nemes succession rules, for there to be a model of all possible worlds which have identity, which are compositions of identity, which are conjunctions, successions of identity, there is necessarily a being of identity, conjunction, and succession. And so in this sense, God doesn't exist in the sense of there isn't a succession of the structure of God. God isn't in motion, but the concept of God is about the being of the transcendentals of reality. That God, you can't even say that God is real because God is beyond reality. And I'd suggest this is the God of the philosophers. This is perhaps the God of Aristotle. But rather than being a sort of initial prime mover, being doesn't just happen in time. It isn't temporal, it is beyond temporality. It is eternal, doesn't have a beginning and end. It is isness. But even that, again, is describing God as having an is, rather than being is. I think this concept of God, one cannot have direct knowledge of, because again, direct knowledge can only be of eames, ooms, nemes succession, so on. This is quotes below unquotes eames. This is below identity. This is below conjunction. This is below succession. So one can only have knowledge about it, not it itself. Because again, it itself, that's identity. And so we face that disconnect in communication because semantic meaning can only map to reality. It cannot speak beyond it. It cannot speak beyond its axioms, its transcendentals. So I hope this was illuminating. I hope that this helps you understand what the concept of God is about and that you can ponder it more. I'd like to thank you for watching. If you find any of these ideas interesting, I'd like to invite you to leave a like, please share. It's free and it helps a lot. I invite you to please subscribe, join the Skool community, and to follow my link tree down below. Thank you for watching, and may you have a beautiful day.